Leo, this is your July tarot reading. Now, last month, June, you were tested through conflict. And what the test is about is seeing how you've changed, seeing what you have learned, because of when you get into these conflicts, you fall back on behaviours probably from your childhood. And what these tests have been about is trying to expose to you a better way of dealing with things, not having to fall back on this childhood trauma. So do you fare better in July? Well, there isn't any direct conflict. We've got this devil card from the past, which I think is talking about this childhood trauma and how it relates to you dealing with conflict. But it doesn't actually tell me if you have successfully moved on or not. The overall energy we have is of investing in yourself, investing long term in yourself. I mean, it could be learning, it could be training, but I think given all that we know that's happened to you, Leo, this is probably you exploring your own deepest inner psychology to resolve these issues. Right now, you're actually feeling brave, you're feeling bold. Fearless, yeah, fearless. But maybe, just maybe, jump to the wrong conclusions. I don't know if that's relevant or not. It might not be. In the future, there are many blessings. There are many blessings. I don't think you do jump to the wrong conclusions, because I think you do learn this month, because we have blessings here after this month, and so the universe is rewarding you for the progress that you've made. The outcome that leads, the energy that leads to the outcome is you taking a rest, and you've been through so much, Leo. A well-earned rest, is very important, that you take a very well-earned rest. That leads to the outcome, and the outcome is you walking away from things. So I think you sort of sort your mind out through this rest, and you decide that even more of what most people think of as normal living, maybe even reality, you start walking away from. What would change things would be, instead of walking away from these things, you putting up appropriate, and they are appropriate, boundaries, so that you don't get manipulated, you don't get abused in the future. But I think you're being encouraged to walk away. I think that's really what you're being encouraged to do. But let's get into it, Leo. Now, the overall energy is one of long-term investment, but it's long-term investment in yourself. And I normally say that it's about going back into learning, going back into training, and could be about those things. I suppose the reason I'm rejecting that is I'm a Leo. There's no way I'm going to start learning, start training again. Not at my age, No, in fact, as time goes on, I am opting out more and more from what people would consider to be normal life, maybe even reality, certainly opting out of consumption, joining, those sorts of things. No, I think it's you sort of exploring your own psychology, exploring why it is you've reacted badly in the past to conflict, and what's behind that, and how you can deal with it so that you don't go back to these sort of traumas of your childhood in terms of how you react. Now, you might have thought that my choice of the word childhood trauma was a little bit strong. But I don't think it is, you see, because of here we have the Devil card. So we're talking of quite important negative effects on your life. So it's about this sort of childhood trauma and how you react to conflict as a result of childhood trauma. And this is the lesson that's being given to you. And to be honest, you've been going through it for a long time now. But I think you're beginning to get to the resolution of it. I really do. This is in the past. And I think you're learning to walk away from it rather than rise to it. And I think that's a massively important lesson. And I do think you got through last month's trauma. Maybe not unscathed, but you're now feeling brave, you're now feeling bold, probably quite fierce as well. There is a danger of this energy you jump into the wrong conclusions. But I believe that after this month you're going to be rewarded for how you have learned, how you have behaved, how you have managed situations. And therefore maybe you're not jumping to the wrong conclusions. Maybe I'm jumping to the wrong conclusions in mentioning that to you, because of that's just a possibility, and I don't think it's there, to be honest. Now I've just said I don't think that you jump to the wrong conclusions because you're being rewarded in the future. Well, here's the future reward. It is multiple blessings on multiple fronts, but probably particularly material blessings. And I think it's materialism that you sort of are walking away from. So it's often a paradox that the thing that you no longer want, or least want, is exactly what the universe, God, Allah, sends to you. And I think you're being sent that in the future. There is, and this wouldn't fit my circumstances for sure, there is a chance that you're all alone here. You don't have a significant other with you, but I say it doesn't fit my circumstances. I suppose, apart from my immediate family, I am rather lonely in Indonesia. That makes it sound like I'm not happy with that. I don't mind too much, to be perfectly honest. So I suppose it could fit. Now, you've been through so much, Leo, and I seem to be constantly telling you that you need to take a rest. But you do yet again here, and it's taking a rest that leads to the outcome. And I think that the outcome is a very positive outcome. In fact, I believe it's this outcome that leads to these blessings in the future. So you really need to take a rest. You need to take your mind off all that's gone on and allow yourself to sort of drift into all these lessons and cogitate, as it were, on the shadow that you've released and hopefully resolved. But yeah, taking a rest is very, very important for you. Yeah, I think it's a good sign that we got this taking a rest, because I think it actually says that a lot of your problems are now over. I really do. I think what would change things is you recognising the deception, recognising the conflicts of the past, and putting up what are completely appropriate boundaries to avoid them in the future. And that seems like a very sensible thing to be doing. And maybe if I was younger, I'd even be saying that's what I'm going to be doing. But it isn't. No, I think this is the sort of sensible way of dealing with it. But in putting up those boundaries, you're also putting up boundaries to the blessings from the universe for you. So that's why I'm not pursuing it myself, and nor am I necessarily recommending it for other Leos. Now, what the outcome is, and I think this is the outcome you're being encouraged to pursue, and that is you walking away from things. You're walking away from conflicts. You're walking away from situations where there is deception. You are turning your back on materialism, turning your back on consumption, turning your back on what most people consider to be reality. I mean, I already live up on a remote mountain in Java. There are many things we don't have here. In fact, as I'm recording this, it'll be 8 days without the internet. Impossible for most people, but they're moving over from satellite to cable. It's a big job, So yeah, I just arbitrarily, the internet goes for 8 days. And there's many things, I haven't got a car, I haven't got a motorcycle, I haven't got a licence for either. I have to walk for half an hour even to get a bus, and then the buses are haphazard. I can get a bus to Jakarta quite easily, that's not bad, but going somewhere else is difficult. The bus to Jakarta takes at least 12 hours, so, So yeah, there's so many things I no longer consume. I've recently had a heart attack, and I was saying on another reading I did, I'm no longer smoking, I'm no longer drinking, and I'm no longer flying. So I've resolved my issues. I've got my inheritance, I've got my retirement, my pensions coming in. But what on earth do I spend my money on? The only things I spent my money on were the odd cigarette, Friday nights in Jakarta, when I'm in Jakarta, having a drink. No other times. Well, maybe on holiday as well, but not at other times. And going off on holidays to Bali and Thailand, So if all of those are restricted to me, what am I going to do now? And this is literally me beginning to say to myself, well, live for every day, be happy with and contented with what you've got, and turn your back on this materialist trappings. And I do see this as positive, not negative. So let's summarise for you, Leo. Leo, I think your reading for July tells me that your turmoils really have ended. Of course, there'll still be ripples, but your turmoils really have ended. You've been through some major lessons on how to deal with conflict, how to respond to conflict, and you've been responding from a childhood trauma. You've been rising to the conflicts. It's ego, but it's from childhood trauma. And I think you're at last beginning to resolve that. You got through last month, but it's left you sort of feeling a bit fierce. I think fortunately you've not jumped to the wrong conclusion, however. So often I tell you need to take a rest, but I think you absolutely need to take a rest now to put everything that's gone on into context. and to allow this learning that you've done, because you have been exploring your own shadow, allow it to bed in. And once it does bed in, I see you removing yourself even further from materialism, even further from the world as many people see it, even the reality as many people see it. Walking away from all that. And I believe this is what the universe, God, Allah wants you to do, because you're going to be blessed afterwards. And paradoxically, even though you're walking away from materialism and money and what have you, I think you're going to be blessed with material benefits. It often happens that way. Often happens that way. Yeah, what would change everything? And I don't think the universe wants you to do this, but I'm a Leo. If I was a younger man, I'd probably be following this alternative. Whereas at my age, I'm definitely taking the advice of the universe. But that is to look at the sort of conflicts, look at the manipulation that you've risen to in the past, and put up appropriate boundaries to prevent it from happening again. Which sounds like the adult sensible thing to do, but actually it isn't. Because what happens is, when you put up these boundaries, you're also putting up boundaries to the blessings from the universe. So I don't think I'd even recommend it to younger Leos, but if you do follow that, I completely understand.